Welcome, welcome. How's everybody doing? Second week of Dragon Ball DAIMA. So we're going to discuss a little bit of that. Also, I watched a little bit more of Batman the Animated Series. I got to one of my favorite episodes, Harley Quinn Aid, which I think is the best written Harley Quinn that I've ever experienced personally. It was quite good in terms of an episode. I wish I had taken notes on it. I didn't have time to watch it again to take notes on it. But if you can find the episode Harley Quinn Aid of Batman the Animated Series, it will actually trick you into liking Harley Quinn because it was very good. And I forgot how much I hated Harley as much as I liked that episode. She was actually good in that episode. It was just a very interesting episode of Dragon Ball of Batman the Animated Series. So I guess we I didn't watch anything new. People keep telling me to watch the TV show Supernatural. They said I might like it. I don't know. Um, I'll try it though. I'll try Supernatural. I'll probably watch one episode tomorrow, or watch as many as I can tomorrow, and let's see what happens. But I'm always looking for new things to watch. And Supernatural. Another one was Grimm. So I should have just done a poll, or maybe I'll still do it. I'll do it after the show, maybe, where whether I should watch Supernatural or Grimm, because I had a friend who told me I should watch Grimm too. So, so I'll put a poll up on the channel, and folks can decide whether I should watch Supernatural or Grimm. Folks will decide whether I should watch Supernatural or Grimm, and whichever one is decided is the one I probably watch one episode of both and follow from there, but we'll see. So, Dragon Ball Daima, episode 2, another episode where basically that you're doing all they're doing is setting up stuff. But they're hitting you with lore. And if you're not interested, and I know a lot of people are, I saw this term used, and I think it's probably the best term to explain it. If you're a Dragon Ball Z musclehead, that's mostly for people who just watched the Saiyan arc through Boo. That's pretty much it. If you started at Z and have not gone backwards, you could pretty much be considered a guy who's not interested in Dragon Ball Daima. This is um this is not a it's an action series clearly because Dragon Ball is an action series. But this is a good old fashioned Dragon Ball hunt, and they're pretty much setting the pace right now for what the hunt is going to be like. They've already established the bad guys. Now they have to reestablish the good guys. And one of the things that folks really didn't like is that all the characters are now nerfed. As children, they don't have access to their full abilities. In fact, they had to learn how to fly again. So this was off-putting to people, and I understand that. But for me, I like the idea that they were nerfed, and I thought that a series that does not require them to transform and have new forms is actually good. I'm one of those people that yes, you should. Dragon Ball is a series that is about progression, personal achievement, etc. But that's not always found in new transformations. Sometimes bettering yourself is overcoming weaknesses that were placed upon you by someone else. So we know that eventually they're going to transform into Super Saiyans, but we don't know if it's going to go beyond that, and we don't think that it will. At least I don't think that it will. But who knows how much of their power they will have access to. Um, WG Phil is having a birthday today. So everybody, as you come in, happy birthday to WG Phil. Um, so we appreciate you, man. Glad that you stopped by. Glad that you're here. And what did you think of the episode? We're gonna put you on center stage today. But like I was saying, I liked the old school nature of Daima, that it's going to be a lot of hand to hand combat, a lot of martial arts, at least until they start key blasting and transformation spamming, which I think Super got a little too far into that, and Z got a little far into it near the end of the Boo saga. Um, Things like tactics stopped mattering as much, and I would be glad if Daima brings that back. You know, so I'll look forward to that, and that's what I'm actually looking forward in terms of Daima, and that's something that was missing in GT is the fights that didn't feel consequential. And I know a lot of people will say, well, Daima, it would assume that the villains are not as strong as the villains in Z because they're going to have to defeat them in nerfed forms. And we're assuming they're going to do a speed run through the demon realm, and then at the end they're going to transform themselves into adults again. Which what may happen is like halfway through the series they become adults again. So we don't know. But ultimately, um, I like the idea of them being nerfed, them having to learn how to use these smaller bodies. You know, it gives more of the villains, especially since we don't know where the villains rank on whether they're as powerful as Majin Buu, as powerful as each android or cell, or we don't know. So it gives the villains more of a chance now that the heroes have been nerfed, that we can now establish where the villains are in the hierarchy. And actually, I like it because it puts them more in the hole. I say it all the time on this channel that you want to put your heroes in a hole, and the hole has to be something that they have to overcome. And in Dragon Ball, it's always been the introduction of a more powerful enemy. In this situation, it doesn't seem like it was an introduction of a more powerful enemy, because if Goma was more powerful than they were, he wouldn't have turned them into children. He turned them into children because he wasn't more powerful than they were. He was concerned about their power. That's why he turned them into children. So we're told pretty much immediately that Goma is not as strong as Majin Buu, and they defeated Majin Buu, so Goma was concerned about that. But we also know that Goma is not the final boss. At least I don't believe he is. Um, and we've actually seen how other characters may have other abilities, like Neva, the old Namekian. We've seen he has some pretty badass powers. We don't know what else he can do. So for me, it's more interesting this way. I always like when there's an interesting way for the villains to have an advantage. And turning them into children gives them a good hole to crawl out of. But it's mostly just good marketing and action figures, DLC packs, and for video games, etc. WG Phil says it was nice world building. He said he noticed that the gags are true to Toriyama's taste, like the power pole was a dry cleaning tool over the past 18 years or so in universe. Yeah, some of the gags make sense, but what I especially liked um, is the traditional Toriyama story arc. One of the things that really makes Daima so much different from GT is Bulma. Bulma is going to be in the story now. You can see from the opening video and with the music and everything, Bulma's going on the adventure. So Bulma is going to be an integral part of the story. And that's traditional Dragon Ball immediately. When Bulma goes on the adventure, you're having a Dragon Ball adventure. This is, of course, there's going to be plenty of fisticuffs because Goku is going. But, you know, um, when Bulma is going on the adventure, it's a traditional Dragon Ball adventure. They're taking uh, So they're taking a interesting path, going through the roots of the original Dragon Ball. And again, this is being made because I think it's the 40th anniversary of the original Dragon Ball. And so at that point, they want to fuse all the things that have existed up to this point and add something new to it. So GT is a part of that. The old Dragon Ball is a part of that. And they're trying to make something new and fresh out of it. Uh, Leith LG says, did Corin the cat become younger too? No, but here's the thing that I find to be interesting. Not everybody was seemingly made the same age. Now we know that via the wish, Dende, Trunks, and Goten were turned into babies. Now Gohan, we're not sure because we don't know where Gohan is. That's one of the big question marks. Is that Gohan? We don't know if he was turned into a baby or not. Gohan is slightly older than Dende, slightly, or they might even be the same age. So, but he's much older than Trunks and Goten. So if they were turned into babies, was Gohan turned into a kid, or was he turned into a baby? And until Gohan is revealed, we don't know. But Korin was not turned into a child, and neither was the turtle at the Turtle Hermit. He wasn't affected either. But I like that each character in Dragon Ball had a different reaction to being turned into a kid. Of course, Goku took it in stride because that's typically Goku. He's not physically harmed. It's just annoying that he's a kid and he's just trying to adapt to it. Vegeta, of course, is very upset. Piccolo is just taking it in stride. But Chi Chi and Bulma actually like being younger. And this, of course, sets you up for the way Bulma's going to use the Dragon Balls in Super to keep herself young. So it's giving you a good setup. And it actually, shows you that Dragon Ball characters, it's very weird how the Dragon Ball franchise is written where these crazy catastrophic things occur and it affects the characters, but it doesn't affect them long term. Like it was a discussion that occurred on Twitter a couple of days ago about Majin Vegeta at the World Martial Arts Tournament that he murdered all of those people, and there was no discussion about it. There was no discussion amongst anybody about Vegeta being let back into the team or being, his wife didn't have who watched this occur was not affected at all. And then that just takes you to the next level. Like Majin Buu ate these people. Majin Buu ate every single person that was there. Or a version of Majin Buu ate all of these people, and Majin Buu just gets to hang around. Like these characters, they go through such traumatic things, and they don't hold grudges. They seemingly get over things almost to a degree. It's it's not good for the product. At the same time, it works for the series because it allows them to move on to other threats without carrying too much baggage. And that actually what made like Vegeta or Piccolo or even Frieza to a degree, in the Red Ribbon Army and the villains more interesting because they typically hold grudges. Goku doesn't really hold a grudge against anybody. No matter what you did in the series, he typically just moves on. Bulma typically just moves on, but Vegeta holds grudges for years. The Red Ribbon Army holds grudges for years. Frieza grudges for years, but the heroes get over things almost like that, and it's a little weird. It's a little weird. So, but in this episode, we saw what's under Mr. Popo's turban. I don't know, understand, like, he got tiny and all of a sudden his turban disappears. But now he has horns, so that that he's not supposed to be a human being. But they didn't say Mr. Popo was a demon. I think that reveal is coming. You know, I'm almost certain that reveal is going to end up coming out. That Mr. Popo was some kind of demon or some kind of demon deity. So that would be very interesting because Mr. Popo is just a character that many people think that Toriyama didn't know how to draw black people, and then therefore there's Mr. Popo. No, Toriyama's version of a black person was actually General Black in the Red Ribbon Army. He still had the big meaty lips, but he wasn't that dark. He didn't look like um, a caricature from like the old blackface days. So it's an interesting it's an interesting twist that we got here that Mr. Popo might end up being a demon. So it did explain that not all of the characters with pointy ears are from the demon world, which works out because Saiyans have pointy ears when they're in their monkey form. So that explains that. But it also it adds some level of intrigue because now you're like, okay, which characters with pointy ears are from the demon realm? And I'm pretty sure Mr. Popo is going to be on that list. Mr. Popo is not a really important character to the series anymore, but I'm very interested in seeing where Mr. Popo ends up in this thing. Leith LG says, "Do you think we'll ever see the return of Launch and Daima or some other Dragon Ball product?" I think eventually. I was just in the Discord asking about regular Dragon Ball characters, OG Dragon Ball characters, and people seemingly have no interest at all in like the first. I don't know how many chapters it is that before we get to Raditz, but it's like 50, I think. Probably a little more than 50. People just seemingly don't have no interest in that at all. It's like Goku with the Nimbus and the Power Pole, the Red Ribbon Army, Tao Pai Pai, the Pilaf Gang, the Tenkaichi Budokai is him fighting Tien, and him going through the desert and fighting Yamcha, like all this Master Rabbit. You have no Master Carrot. You don't have no interest in this stuff. So characters like Launch easily get tossed aside when she could be entered into the series. At the same time, though, we have a Dragon Ball product right here in Daima. There's no Tien. There's no Tien and there's no Chaozu. And I haven't seen them at all. I haven't seen Gohan, I haven't seen Tien, I haven't seen Chaozu. So, I mean, sometimes there's just too many characters for them to keep track of. This is why I wish they would have got rid of Boo. I don't think adding Boo to the gang really helps matters at all. I just don't see how he's useful. He's just a fat goof. I don't know. Also, I think this was in episode 1 where they said that Goku wished for Majin Buu to be a good guy so he could stay on Earth. I don't remember that happening that way. It didn't happen that way. And I think Krillin was the one who said it. But Krillin wasn't there when it occurred either. So, he might not be a reliable character to say this. But that's not what occurred. What happened was the fat Majin Buu turned on his own. He became pretty much a good guy on his own. And that's important as a character arc for Majin Buu. If it was the work of the dragon, then Majin Buu didn't have a character arc. It was just a wish from the dragon. But if Majin Buu turned on his own, then he can be trusted because he turned on his own. So I think ultimately that was one of those things where they sought to try to explain why Boo was there, and they overthought it. They certainly overthought it. Just like the Potara thing, I felt like they overthought it. They could have just had the wish that allowed Majin Buu to stay on Earth, and then their second wish was to defuse Kibito and the Supreme Kai. I mean, ultimately, who cares? We assume that Daima is taking place shortly after the Buu saga anyway. So there's that. It seemed like they just overthought it. WG Field says, I think it's due to all of Goku's friends were enemies. True, but you would think that characters that have gone through all kinds of atrocities would actually, carry some of that weight. And sometimes, and this is a big criticism of Dragon Ball, is the characters don't really carry a lot of baggage. They don't carry a lot of weight. And it almost makes things feel inconsequential. Like characters dying, and they could just get wished back with the Dragon Balls. So it's like, okay, do you really care if a character dies? It's like, yeah, if it's written right, you still might care that a character dies in the series. But they don't really carry any real weight. And when you have these characters that have been through so much, you have to question whether they carry any kind of baggage into the next series, and they typically don't. You know, and I think this actually helps, and it's part of it is how Toriyama writes is he focuses on the future, not so much on the past. So when he comes up with something, he retcons a lot of what he had done already because he's forward thinking. He's not working with a lore Bible. It's not like he's got a thick book of unbreakable laws like he's writing Looney Tunes or something like that. He's just like writing what he thinks is cool, and he's going to change whatever he needs to change to make the story fit. And it's annoying to people who are like, I want to put this all into one canon and build on that. And when you write that way, the characters don't carry any baggage. It's like Conan the Barbarian sometimes, where he goes from adventure to adventure, never really reflecting on other adventures. Like he doesn't really think too much about things that happened in the past. And some series are like that. Usagi Yojimbo is like that too, for the most part, where only certain things that happen in Usagi's life even matters. As the story goes on, you typically will forget certain characters even exist. That doesn't mean that the characters no longer exist. It's just that there are, of course, recurring characters in Usagi Yojimbo, but not everything is the most important thing, and not everything is building off of something. Sometimes there's just these events that occurred that we now have to get over, you know. But you know, um, people like when events matter and they stack on top of each other. And this is what a long running series like like Spider-Man or something actually matters. And sometimes people struggle to get those characters to fit, and they struggle to get the lore to fit. And that's kind of what happens sometimes in American comics. Something happened, some guy wrote a story 30 years ago, and you're struggling to make that fit into your current story. So sometimes you might just retcon it. Sometimes you'll just, forget about it. Or you might have somebody who literally cares about all that stuff that was written 30 years ago, and they want to use it, you know? So it seems like Daima is a series in which Super was the most interesting thing they've done in years. So they retrofit parts of Super into Daima. And in doing that, there's no Tien, no Chaozu, none of the characters from original Dragon Ball appear. I don't remember seeing 18. I know she was there, but she doesn't really matter in the story at all. So that kind of stuff just occurs. Kibito and the Supreme Kai were separate in Super, so now they're separate in Daima, even though technically they should still be one in Daima. So Boo's there, even though Boo's supposed to be there anyway. But Boo's dog isn't there. Where's Boo's dog? Anyway, um, Leith Elzy says, I hope this show gives the Supreme Kai some justice because ever since Fat Boo beat him up, he's been lame. Well, he's still lame. He's still pretty lame, but it's going to at least make him useful from what it seems like. It seems like he's actually going to be useful this time. Because he's going to go. He's going in the first ship. He's going with Glorio, who is all mysterious and shifty looking. We'll talk about that in a second. But the Supreme Kai, he knows the demon realm, so he's going to be useful at the very least. WG Phil says Dragon Ball Z was the first to get dubbed. By the time Z was dubbed, it was wrapping up the Majin Buu saga, while the original run ended in 98. I'm sorry, 89. Kevin Abreu says Dragon Ball Diamond going to the demon realm. You need to bring back King Piccolo Garlic Jr. Um, that would be interesting, wouldn't it? But again, you're talking about a series that often forgets its own history. Like one of the things is they forgot that Kami and Piccolo didn't even know they were Nameks, and now all of a sudden Piccolo knows about the demon realm. Now we have all headcanoned, and it makes sense that Piccolo learned about this from Nail, who is of course grew up on Namek and likely knew the origin of the Nameks. So that makes sense. But would have been nice if Piccolo would have mentioned that, you know. But he also knew who Neva was. So that means Nail is informing Piccolo of all this Namekian lore. But when he was asked about it, he said, "Oh, I heard of it," instead of saying, "Well, I gained all this information when Nail when I absorbed Nail. This was all information that I gained, about the truth about the Nameks and where they're really from, and that they're really from the demon realm and all this kind of stuff." But they didn't even go that route. They just kind of had Piccolo be the authority on Nameks because he's the only Namek around. And everybody's kind of like, wait a second. Demon King Piccolo didn't know he was a Namek. Kami didn't know he was a Namek. How the hell does Piccolo know he's a Namek? And the only answer is he learned from Nail. That's the only answer you can come up with. Because Dende didn't know either. So the only answer is Nail. Otherwise, the ass pulled this and it just brought Piccolo along. Well, Piccolo has to go on the story because he's going to the demon realm where the Nameks are from. So him being there makes sense. So um, we're told some more demon world lore about different types of people escaping the demon realm and coming into I guess you can say, the mortal realm, and how those people um, mixed in, I guess, with kind of normal society, I guess you could say. And eventually it was forbidden for people to leave the demon realm and come to the mortal realm. That actually leaves a door open that somebody is in control of that. Somebody can stop people from going back and forth between the demon realm and the mortal realm. But my question is, can fortune teller Baba, did she know about the demon realm? Because, she is otherworldly. You remember she knew about the other world, King Yemma and all that kind of stuff. Did she know about the demon realm? Is she going to be featured in the story? And no, not likely. Not likely, right? That's a Dragon Ball character that very rarely shows up. In fact, I don't think there has really been fortune teller Baba involved in the story in any major way in Z forward. You know, she just. But it's an interesting character that, again, is in Dragon Ball, and you understand that she's probably been forgotten by Toriyama and Toei and everybody else. They pretty much just they got a new character in the Supreme Kai who could do something similar to Fortune Teller Baba. So you don't need her. But it would have been interesting to have her involved. Now, speaking of her, we can talk about Master Roshi, who apparently was not turned into a kid, but was turned into a younger, yet older person. Like I think they're all supposed to be like first graders. But somehow Master Roshi seems like he's older than the rest. Um, Now we know that Master Roshi supposedly drank the sacred water or the fountain of youth or whatever, and he's supposed to be like 300 years old or something like that. So him being young again gives him the opportunity to to be stylish and to pick up chicks, which I think is a great gag for Master Roshi. So, but that's what I mean by Dragon Ball characters and and the weight of the series, because Master Roshi isn't, you know, he's such a strong character that turning him young would help him tremendously and would make him happy. because he's been old for so long. Like everybody having such a happy-go-lucky attitude about being turned into a baby. And Piccolo seem to be the only two that are legitimately upset by it. Even Chi-Chi was like, "Oh, I have such smooth skin," along with Bulma. You know, they they're not even freaking out really. Which is very interesting. Kevin Abreu says, "I wish Dragon Ball Diamond was followed Universe 6 journey. That can be interesting." Hmm. He said the Buu saga ruined Piccolo for no reason. It seemed to me like they had run out of Piccolo stories, and Piccolo became essentially just babysitter. As the Saiyans become more and more prominent, he just became the babysitter for Trunks and Goten, and which works because it's the same magic that works between him and Gohan. The difference was he was still instrumental into the story, and he was growing right along with Gohan. With Trunks and Goten, we had already seen Piccolo's character arc, and now he's kind of going through it again. So he's sort of, the wise old master that's going to take care of all the Saiyan kids. So because he's also the chief babysitter for Pan, so that's unfortunate. It's very unfortunate. But I think they're probably going to try to explain why Piccolo turns orange at some point. They're probably going to try to explain the orange Piccolo transformation in Daima. Oh, his skin's going to turn orange because maybe that's the original color of the Namex or some silly shit like that. So, what else we have in this series? Okay, so another thing is Shenron only gives one wish to newbies, while he gives, I guess, returning customers multiple wishes. This gives Shenron some level of autonomy that he can choose how many wishes he gives people, which would solve the problem of how many wishes you get with Dragon Ball. It could just say, well, Shenron makes the decision. He can give you 3, he can give you 1. It's up to him. Or you could dictate how many wishes you get from the Dragon Ball depending on Shenron's power at the time or something like that. Like if you ask for like sacks of money, that's easy for him to do. Therefore, he can give you an extra wish. But if you ask for something hard, like replacing a planet, he can only do one wish. That might actually be a better way of explaining it. But Dragon Ball likes to do these gags with Shenron, and this felt like one of those things where it was a gag. Like I'm only going to give you one wish. Like you only get one wish. But if you give Shenron some level of autonomy where he could decide how many wishes he gives you, and within his power to do, then I think that would be better for the series in terms of at different parts of the series you get a different number of wishes, and then Toriyama couldn't keep up with how many wishes you're supposed to get. WG Phil says, I think Master Roshi got turned into maybe 3 years older than the rest. Yes, like he's clearly not a little kid, you know, and it seems like all of the characters were turned into kids at a different age. For instance, Bulma and Chi Chi, you know, they seem to be still older than the rest of the gang. You know, like Goku was most affected and turned into basically a younger version of Goku than we saw in the original Dragon Ball. Vegeta seems to be, I think, well, his character's a little bit more mature, but he seems to be about the same age as Goku. And Piccolo's taller, but again, almost the same age. But for some reason, Bulma seems to be older, and Master Roshi seems to be older. And it just might be the way that the characters are portrayed. But Master Roshi is clearly not a child. You know, um, I still don't think he's a child. Kevin Abreu says, I don't think Emperor Pilaf still a kid in Daima. Okay, well that's an interesting question. What will Emperor Pilaf be affected? Because remember, the wish was everybody who fought Majin Buu and their friends. Well, Korin is one of their friends. He was not turned into a child, even though Korin is like a mystical cat. But then again, so is Mr. Popo, some kind of mystical being as well, and he was affected. But the turtle wasn't affected. Korin wasn't affected. We didn't see Yajirobe, so we don't know if Yajirobe was affected. Of course, we don't know if Tien or Chaozu or Gohan was affected and in what way, but they should have been, especially Gohan. He fought Majin Buu with his bare hands. Now, they may try to pull something where Gohan was immune to the spell. Um, I don't see how they would do that, but I don't see that. I just see like Gohan's probably just going to be turned into a baby. But it seems like they're going to just save that reveal for later because Gohan's a pretty big character that has not featured in the show yet. Also, Yamcha being turned into a kid and having face scars is hilarious. So clearly they were turned into mini versions of themselves because they're technically kids, but they have all the knowledge and experience of adults. So it basically just affected their bodies, which is what I expected it to be. But it effect on their bodies, of course, affects their ability to fight. But it didn't affect Bulma that much because she's still super smart. So it's an interesting situation here. But when you think that they were turned into kids, you would think that they would be turned into kids, mind, body, and spirit. But no, their physical bodies were just turned into kid bodies. Lisa Elsie says, "Is it ever explained why Goku doesn't give the power pole to Goten? It would give the poor guy something to stand out." I I honestly think that the power pole and all that stuff is old Dragon Ball, and Toriyama just forgot about it and didn't pay it no attention. Because you would think that would have been one of the things that they could have done to make Goten stand out. But and maybe they will, because Trunks ends up with a sword. Maybe Goten ends up with a Nyoibo, and that could be interesting. And the flying Nimbus and all that. But that actually brings me to what I said. I think I said this last week, and I'm gonna say it again. This would have been so much better as a Trunks and Goten story because they are already kids. So if the Wish would have turned everybody else into a kid instead of Trunks and Goten, they could have, maintained their power and went into the demon realm, and they could have had this whole big adventure with just the two of them. And it would have been interesting to give the kids something to do because it's very Disney as it is anyway. So I don't know, but it's a fun series, Dragon Ball Daima. I understand why people don't want to watch it, but to me, it's an old school Dragon Ball hunt with beautiful animation, interesting lore. They're clearly building something here that's going to be substantial. It may actually get fleshed out more in the super manga. It may get fleshed out more in the super anime. They're definitely going to start making movies out of this series because apparently it's a huge thing. This Dragon Ball Daima, so apparently it's working. So you can see that this is going to further the further the franchise even more by opening up a whole different world, three more worlds for them to operate in. So you got different timelines, different universes, different worlds for these characters to play in. So Toriyama left them with quite a bit to do and a lot to screw up, if we being honest. He's not going to get to flesh out the demon world too much. So that means after the end of Daima, and I'm going to assume that the movie is probably going to be a Daima movie. Um, is likely going to be taken over by somebody who's going to end up really doing the fleshing out of the demon world. Because I think they said Daima is 20 episodes at the least. So I'm going to assume it's at least 20. That's not going to be enough to flesh out all three worlds completely. Kevin Abreu says, big question, who is more powerful, GT Kid Goku or Daima Kid Goku? Well, they seemingly should be like the same power level because Goku is Super Saiyan 3 in both. So, but Daima Kid Goku was lost his ability to transform and everything. He lost his ability to fly. So, well, he got it back in this episode. So he couldn't fly for part of the episode, and then he was able to fly later on. We continues as if Future Trunks returns to the past to see his parents turn to kids. That would be an interesting twist, wouldn't it? If after Majin Buu, we get Trunks coming from the future back to the past just to visit and find out everybody's been turned into a kid. You know, I don't know what he would do at that point, but whatever. WG Phil says the Demon Realm got Dragon Ball Online to take inspiration of, which Toriyama worked on. Well, yeah, that's true. That's true. Hmm. There's a lot that they got to build on, but it's an interesting, little piece of business. So Dende was kidnapped. Dende was turned into a baby. He got kidnapped by Goma, Degasu, and Neva. They took him to the demon realm. So one thing I will say, and people seem to think that Piccolo is going to absorb Neva, or Dende will absorb him, or something like that. I don't think either one of those things will occur because Super happens after this, and they're not. For starters, Piccolo isn't a magic type Namek. He's a combat Namek, and I think that was how they're kind of broken up. There's like mage Nameks, and then there's like warrior Nameks. And Piccolo is a warrior Namek. He's not like a special magic Namek. Like he has some magical abilities, like he can, change people's clothes and little things like that. But he can't, you know, summon the Dragon Balls. Like he can't create Dragon Balls. Kami could, and Kami's gone now. So maybe Piccolo has access to that information, but who knows? That could be interesting. But I don't think that the characters will be fundamentally changed at all. Like I don't see there being any new transformations because these things would have to happen in Super, and they didn't. And this takes place before Battle of Gods, so there's not going to be like a Super Saiyan, 3.5 or something silly like that that's going to happen here. But then again, you never know because they're going to be exposed to different kinds of ki, different power sets. They may learn different techniques, that because Dragon Ball is known for having characters learn a bunch of different techniques that they never used again. Like if you, and this is why, the original Dragon Ball is important because Goku does a bunch of techniques in these tournaments. Before he could fly, before he could key spam, the only thing he could really do was Kamehamehas. He had like a vast arsenal of moves, him and Tien, and none of that stuff is used outside of those tournaments. Like he never uses like, you know, the ability like Tien grew arms, like he grew like forearms or whatever. He never uses that in any other fight. And this is where Naruto really kicks Dragon Ball in the nuts. Because once somebody learns something in Naruto, they just use it all the time. In Dragon Ball, it's like, yeah, he could do this, but he doesn't do it. Like he doesn't do that. Why not? Well, he doesn't remember how to do it, or he forgot. And it's just like that's so bizarre. It's such a bizarre thing. Like Piccolo's ability to grow, like it was used in the tournament, but it was never used after the tournament. Like Piccolo did never decide to go and turn himself into a giant against Frieza or against the androids or Cell or anything like that. He didn't turn himself into a giant. Um, it was similar with stretching his limbs. That's another one of those things. Like the only really thing that he does that is consistent is regrow limbs. Regrow his body and stuff. But other than that, there's a lot of things in the story that he can do that he forgets, and this is part of the way Toriyama writes. He says, "Do you think?" Lethal LD said, "Do you think future? It would have been interesting if Future Trunks had stayed in the main timeline." I don't see what the benefit of that was. What would be the benefit of him staying in the main timeline? The point of his existence was to save his timeline. Why would he stay in the main timeline? And plus, there's already a Trunks in the timeline. It really so he would leave his mom in the in the main timeline just desolate and leave the main timeline with no hero? That doesn't make sense. Like there is nobody else in the main timeline. I mean in his timeline. Now, I do like that they explained that Future Trunks defeated Dabura. They explained that in Super that he defeated Dabura and prevented the rise of Majin Buu, which means that Majin Buu still exists in Trunks' timeline. He's just within the egg, which is interesting. Kerwin says, "One planet I want Dragon Ball Daima to visit, Yardrat planet." That would be interesting. Wouldn't it be interesting if the Yardrat planet was one of the demon worlds? I don't think it will be, but wouldn't it be interesting? WG Field says, "I think the forearms or growing tall doesn't work long term in the battle." Well, clearly they showed you the weaknesses of those things when they were doing it, but to have all of these abilities that they could do, and they never seem to do it. Like Tien can use the Dodon Ray. He never uses the Dodon Ray. He uses it in the video game, but he never uses it in Z at all. Mainly because Tien became irrelevant after the Raditz or the Saiyan fight. But there's a lot of things that these characters can do that would be interesting that they never do. The solar flare is another one. It's something pretty much everybody in the series can use, with the exception like Vegeta and Piccolo. But all of the Turtle Hermit students can use it, except like Yamcha. But you very rarely see it. Like there's a lot of times where a good old solar flare might actually be helpful. Like imagine if he'd have used the solar flare on Frieza, to hit him with the spirit bomb or whatever. That could have been a completely different setup. It would have been great. But people forget that they can do that. And it's unfortunate. Ooh, I'm stuffed. But oh shit, I forgot my list. What else I wanted to talk about here? Okay, so there was a gag in here about Bulma and Kibito, where she's basically sending him to do all these menial tasks. Uh, he had to correct her and say he's not an errand boy. He's also clearly not a child. Like Kibito is clearly turned into somebody younger, but he's not turned into a kid. So I don't know. But Bulma and Kibito, they have a little bit of fun here. And it's amazing how Bulma manages to do that to everybody. She turns everybody into a servant pretty much, right? It's amazing how that keeps happening. She just keeps randomly turning people into servants against their will. Kevin Abreu said, "What is going to be the final boss of Daima?" That's a good question, because it seems like it's going to be Goma, but I don't think so. It seems like Goma's being set up to fail. Um, from what we understand, at least from the first two episodes, Glorio was sent to the mortal realm to get Goku and his friends because the king of the third demon world wants Goma defeated. So he's going to use Goku as kind of an assassin. So it could be the king of the third demon world. Could be. It could be Goma once he eventually gets the evil eye. It may give him all kinds of crazy powers. So it's interesting. We don't know for sure. But Goma's a little goofy. and he does come across as very Emperor Pilaf-ish, and he might not be the main villain, which means the main villain could be Degasu or Dr. Arinsu or some other character that we haven't come across yet. And I think that's part of the interest in the series for me is who is going to the final boss going to be, and watching the story unfold. Like I'm legit, genuinely interested in the story and where it's going. He says, "Imagine how awkward it is if Goku or Chi Chi go around town with Goten. Yeah, it would probably look like they're taking care of their own little brother or something." But Goten and Trunks being turned into babies is such bullshit. Them having telepathy is very weird. They can talk to each other mentally, which wouldn't that mean they could talk to other people mentally? I guess it would be a side effect of them being babyfied, is that they still have the ability to communicate even if they're babies. But of course, you would have to explain why they can't use that stuff any other time. So it has to be fixed. Hopefully, at the end of the story, it won't be some kind of weird thing where everybody's wished away and everything is reversed, so that it won't affect Super in any real way. But instead, everybody's just wished back to being restored to their size. So I did like the opening song. Um, I'm not really a big anime openings kind of guy. I'm personally the only anime openings I really really like are Cowboy Bebop and Samurai Champloo. Those two really stand out because Bebop, with the jazz and Champloo with the hip hop. But other than that, I typically like the theme song to Daima. I think it fits. Like I said, Daima it's very Disney. It has the feel where magic is important to the story, clearly, and it gives a magical vibe. And I like that Dragon Ball can be this, because this is classic adventure stuff here. If it didn't have Dragon Ball trappings to it, it probably wouldn't stick as hard with people. But I think the fact that it is Dragon Ball is why it works. Kevin Abreu says we need to see Vegeta's brother or Kid Broly in Diamond. Well, Broly was way after the resurrection of Frieza, so it's not going to be in. He's not going to be involved in this. You know, and plus, I think they were smart to label that stuff Super because Super has its own timeline, and Broly fits into the Super timeline. He doesn't fit into the Daima timeline at all. Like saying 97, I find it weird how Gohan is not in Daima. That's been my biggest stand. I'm not really a big Gohan guy. Like I'm not a big Gohan stan, but that's a major hole in the franchise missing. I know that Gohan is not a character that gets a lot of play these days, but for Gohan to not be involved at all in this is very bizarre. My only guess is there's some kind of secret to Gohan. There's some kind of surprise we're supposed to be waiting for Gohan. Um, because he's not in the. Everybody's in the opening credits except Gohan. Trunks is there. Goten is there. 18. What's the baby's name? Um, Marin. Marin is there. You know, Yamcha. No, Tien is not there, and Chaozu's not there either. But Yamcha, 18, Mr. Satan. But Gohan, Videl, Tien, and Chaozu, and of course Puar and Oolong, they're not there. But Puar and Oolong are like old Dragon Ball characters, so of course they're not going to be there. So it's weird. Um, I don't understand it personally. Also, was Majin Buu turned into a kid? Because I don't remember seeing Majin Buu after everybody was turned into a kid. Where did Majin Buu go? So maybe episode 3 will answer that question. Maybe not. Who knows? But yeah, no Gohan is a big problem. That's a big, big issue. WG Phil says the theme had a popular US EDM guy doing the song. So the theme got a popular German DJ doing the song. Which one is it? Is it a popular US EDM guy or popular German DJ? Either way it goes, I think it fits the series. And do I think it's a song that you're just gonna dance to and listen to on your own? No. But do I think it fits the series? Yes. I expect people to spam it to death at YumaCon in 2 weeks. I do expect that. I got a feeling it's going to be like when I went to WrestleMania and I showed up and all I could hear was "It's fire burns," and they was playing it out of every goddamn moving vehicle in downtown Detroit at the time. Um, so WG Phil says German EDM DJ named Zed did some music with Logic. Oh, okay. He says Boo did turn young, but he didn't turn into Kid Boo. Okay, that's interesting. That's interesting. Because Boo did fight Boo, so that's fair. Also, Mr. Satan wasn't turned into a child. He clearly like he was about a teenager or early teen. He looked like he was substantially older than the rest of the cast. So that's like him and Master Roshi seem to be not as affected as the rest of the cast in terms of being turned into children. Do I think Oob will make it? Oob is at the end of Z. You got to think about where the timeline fits and all this stuff. Why would Oob be there? Oob probably hasn't even been born yet. What's my opinion of him as a character? He sucked in Z. I mean, not in Z. I'm sorry, because he debuted at the end of Z. He sucked in GT. I don't know where he would fit in Super because they created Super and now DAIMA in this space that Toriyama left between the end of Boo to the end of Z. And they're creating stories within that blank space. So we haven't got to the tournament where Oob is going to show up yet. So he hasn't technically. I don't think he's even been born yet, unless he's still a kid. So because we don't know how old Oob was, but he was old enough to fight in a tournament. He probably is born at this point in time, but he's probably a little kid, like legitimately. And as a character, I think there's always potential, but Dragon Ball is never going to move away from Goku and well, basically Goku. And if they had made the decision to move away from Goku, then or or they probably should do a Star Trek situation and have concurrent timelines. That means they should split the series. I know I'm giving away free ideas, but this can make Toei a lot of money. Where you had Deep Space Nine and Voyager happening and they were both on the air at the same time. Where you create a Dragon Ball in which you take the cast and you split the cast in half essentially. That Goku, Vegeta, and they can go on their other world adventures where everybody's stronger than Majin Buu and everybody they turn Super Saiyan green or whatever and fight them. Or Broly and Frieza and all that. But then the rest can go do something else. And this is where you can get Gohan as either the main character or Goten as the main character or Trunks or something like that. And then you can actually just put Oob with them, you know? And that could be something where you could split the series by having like upper tier, more powerful characters into the go to Goku Vegeta stuff where they're doing God of Destruction, um, Angel, Ultra Instinct, and all that. And then you could have other stories being told in like the demon realm or in the deeper parts of space or whatever with some of the weaker characters. And you can give them opportunities to flesh out and be the hero sometime and stuff like that too. I think that's one of the weaknesses of the Dragon Ball franchise is that they haven't grown away from doing more without Goku. And part of that is I think we saw with Superhero is things that are very easily memory hold when Goku is not around. So that's unfortunate. WG Phil says he's glad that Dragon Ball Daima is more accessible. It seems more people are accustomed to the sub due to Super and the Vic stuff. Pretty much made people go sub exclusively. Yeah, um, I don't like the I don't like the Japanese voices. I don't like them. Dragon Ball is one of those series I definitely prefer in English. All right. Um, there are some series where I will only watch them in English. Yu Yu Hakusho, I will only watch that in English. Uh, Samurai Champloo, Cowboy Bebop, Outlaw Star, I will only watch those in English. Dragon Ball, I'm suffering through Daima in Japanese because I want to see it. But once it's dubbed, I'll probably never listen to the Japanese version again. Because I never watched Dragon Ball in Japanese until I got the big bricks, the DVDs. Then I watched it all in Japanese. Kerwin Abreu says one character I want to see back for Tick Seckers is Bacterian. You that's maybe one too many Dragon Ball characters. um, but yeah, like there's a lot of weird characters that were in Dragon Ball, the original Dragon Ball, that I think would be fun if people actually knew about them. You know, Devil Man, who could kill anybody who has an evil heart, even though it wouldn't make sense because he'd be able to beat pretty much everybody immediately, right? Um, but Grandpa Gohan is another one. The fact that he's just not a bigger part of the franchise is crazy to me. Again, I think we talked about this last week. Like, the idea that Toriyama didn't even think to bring him back. Like, he's dead. It's over. Let sleeping dogs lie. We don't even see him with King Kai or anything like that. It's like he's just gone, bro. It's like it's hilarious. Um, Kevin Abreu says, big questions: how many episodes going to be in season? Um, I don't know. I know it's not short. What did Geekdom say? Geekdom said at least 20. So it's going to be on the air for a while. Um, at this pace, though, they may end up having to do more because I don't think that they're going to be able to get through 3 Demon Worlds unless they speed run through some of this stuff in 20 episodes. And I want them to flesh it out as much as possible. Get as much as you can out of this thing. But I do want them. I do want to get to the action, and I do want to get to the plot running. So I don't want them dragging this stuff too behind too slowly. But I do want them to take their time. Black Saiyan 97 says he wants to see bring back Jiren and Hit, mostly Hit and how he became an assassin. Yeah, like those are interesting stories. How he learned the time skip technique, that kind of stuff could be really fun. And it's where Dragon Ball lacks. It lags behind things like Naruto because in Naruto they have those crazy detours where you learn about other characters and how they develop like their master techniques and all this kind of shit. Dragon Ball never does that. Dragon Ball always focuses around Goku and the gang, and then sometimes they'll spend more time eating than actually giving the villains some real depth. But that's when you realize that Toriyama, as a writer, you know, doesn't really look at things from that perspective. You know, and that actually probably slows the series growth down a little bit because part of why people can say they don't watch the original Dragon Ball is Toriyama has made it so easy to skip. You don't ever have to go back to it. It's almost never referenced, you know? So you're not missing anything if you don't go back and watch it. Also, fuck Jiren. Moving on. WG Field says, I don't think they would move away from the Sun family until Masako retires or passes. I think Grandpa Gohan is treated like Uncle Ben Wayne family. Yeah, I mean, it's clear. I mean, once he wasn't going to get brought back in the original Dragon Ball series, it was clear he was never coming back. But he's not really a motivation for Goku either, you know? Um, and to be quite honest, I'm trying to remember if Goku even realized that he killed his own grandpa. You know, everybody else knows, and that's another one of those things where it doesn't really stick. You know, like Grandpa. Goku talks about Grandpa Gohan says never look at the full moon. A big monster comes out, and you find out his Grandpa Gohan got stepped on by that big monster, and it turns out it was Goku. But it doesn't hold any real baggage to his character. You know, like it doesn't hold any baggage to any of the other characters either. They never mention it, never talk about it. It's not a big deal. And so there's plenty of people who watched Z who, they didn't see that and they don't feel the need to. And that's part of it is because it feels like a different series once we're out of the Pilaf gang stuff. Dragon Ball feels like a completely different series. And that's why, DAIMA fits so well because Dragon Ball, you can do stuff like GT and it can still work because space travel is a part of what the series can do. And you can do time travel, which is what the series can do. So sci-fi elements. And now they're trying to bring in magical elements, fantasy elements. And you can do that too, because they already told you a demon realm exists. So now you can go play there, and that seems to be where they're going. And I'm very interested in that. He said Goku acknowledged it during his battle against the Great Ape Vegeta. Okay. I probably read that and don't remember. But it's another one of those things where it didn't have the weight. Yeah, you're right. He did. You're right. He did. Yeah. Now that you mention it, I do remember that now. And he kind of gave like a short apology for it, but he was in the middle of the fight, so it was whatever. But afterwards, he was just kind of back to being regular old Goku. And the rubber band characters is what I call them. It's like you stretch them, twist them, and then ultimately they end up back the exact same way as they were before. And that doesn't quite stick all the ways with people. But Japan is really good with that anyway. Is they really create these characters that go through these horrible things and they still are themselves afterwards. The hero characters, they go through all these horrible situations. They're and they rarely change, especially in shonen. Naruto went through a hell of a lot, and he was still Naruto at the end. And that actually is what people like. Is it shows that you can go through all these horrible and terrible things and remain yourself. At the same time, though, in real life, trauma changes you irreparably forever. you know, and usually the characters like Sasuke and Vegeta, they carry these kind of lingering emotions within them forever, and it causes them all kind of heartache and pain. So Kevin Abreu says we never got a Vegeta versus Piccolo. There's a lot of stuff in what the weirdest thing, again, talking about the way Dragon Ball fights, Dragon Ball is written. Not only did you never get a Piccolo and Vegeta fight, they rarely even talk. Like those characters rarely talk to each other. Dragon Ball is a series where these characters have been around for so long. Some of them never have conversations with each other, and they're pretty regular. It's not like a conversation like, oh yeah, Vegeta doesn't talk to Oolong. Well, Oolong is never fucking around anymore, you know. Like it's not one of those things. But he very rarely even recognizes some of the other characters exist. Like really in Daima, Vegeta asked Hercule who he was. Like it was hilarious, you know. Um, so it's one of those things where the way that the series is written, the characters don't dwell on personal relationships too much, you know. So it's very unique in that way that they get away with it because people think that these guys are friends, and I always say like the Z team, they don't come across as guys who are friends. They barely talk. You know, they're Goku's friends. As far as each other, is maybe they're Bulma's friends, but are they friends amongst each other? I don't know. You know, like they showed up to Bulma's house for Trunks' birthday, but it might have just been they were there for because Bulma asked them to come. You know, like it's a really interesting dynamic that they have with the series though, and it's interesting because it allows so much room for stuff like fan fiction because it's like the last Tien and Vegeta conversation happened shortly before Frieza came to Earth. Have they ever talked since then? And that was a tense situation where it looked like they were going to fight. And I don't think Vegeta and Tien have even spoke since that time. And how long ago was that? You know, it's like, are these guys friends? No, they're not friends. No, they are not friends. That was only because Tien was walking around with baggage from the Saiyan saga. One of the few people who were, you know, fucking Yamcha died in that. He didn't care about Vegeta being there. So it was weird, man. But sometimes it's those little things like that that make characters stand out. Kevin White says, "You're telling me after so many years of fighting that learning to fly in a small body was that difficult for the Z fighters. Also, why did Dende and Popo just stand around while those wishes were made?" Well, Dende got assaulted when the wish was made, so not exactly them just standing around. They did chop Dende in the heart right before, but Goku never flew as a kid, so it was a completely different situation. And I would imagine that's going to be the major difference of why it wasn't so problematic for Vegeta is because he was flying as a kid, but Goku didn't. Remember, Goku didn't learn how to fly until he was a teenager. So because he was riding on the Nimbus cloud. So I thought they were going to bring the Nimbus cloud back as a way of bridging the gap until Goku learned how to fly again. But he learned how to fly again in 2 days in the series or whatever. But they did explain it pretty well that a lot of, when you're an adult for so long and all of a sudden you're turned into a kid, your body is different. Your key control and all that kind of stuff is different. But Goku never flew as a kid. Realistically, WG Phil says, would you talk to your girl's ex-boyfriend who got killed by Cyberman? No, but that's why I say like these people are not friends. People think that the Z Fighters are friends. They're not friends, and it's an alliance essentially. People think that they're the Avengers. Like, no, they're not friends. You know, it's weird because they're always together for like parties and shit when like the movies happen or something. But the only people who are really friends is Goku and Krillin. Like they're the only ones that are really friends. Piccolo is like really a friend to them. Vegeta's not really their friend. You know, Tien and Chaozu is not. They might be on good terms. Are they really friends? I don't know. Like I don't know if they're really friends. So it's an interesting thing, man. So that's like Hercule. Hercule is their family now. He's Goku's, he's Goku's family now. Are they really friends? Mm, like it's one of those weird things, man, that happen in the Dragon Ball series, where it's mostly like an alliance. Like they come together for big events and fighting villains, but that's usually it. They kind of move on after that and do their own thing. But we never know where the hell they are, and nobody else seems to know either. But Dragon Ball has always been one of those series where those guys appear and they say, "Oh, I haven't seen you in 10 years" or some shit. That's always how Dragon Ball has been. Goku lives in his own little world where sometimes he doesn't see people for 3 or 4 years. Doesn't call, doesn't do anything. Just he just he doesn't see people for 10 years or whatever, and he's still the same person afterwards. He says, "Isn't Piccolo a friend to Gohan's family?" Yeah, he's basically a member of the family at that point. But is Piccolo friends with Vegeta? No. Is he friends with Tien? No. Is he friends with Krillin? No. Like, like he's friends with Goku and he's friends with Gohan, but that's about it. And since they're the main characters, he makes it seem like he's friends with everybody. But he seemingly has no real relationship to the rest of the characters in the group in the series, and he's always there. You know, it's interesting because like in the video games, they do fun stuff like fusions with the humans and shit. But it's not anything they would ever do on the show itself. He says Ox King just want a grill. Right, he's just a big old dad, man. That's really all he is. He's just a giant dad. It was funny because they really built him up to be like he was the most terrifying dude in the world in the original series. He was the most terrifying guy with like a burning mountain around his house. And then all of a sudden he ended up being like the biggest sweetheart of all time. I can't believe this. It's such subversive writing from Toriyama about building people up and then undercutting them with like vices or subversive things like Beerus, like Beerus being a giant cat who can like destroy anything he wants, but he chooses to sleep and eat ice cream. Like it adds layers to the character that most people wouldn't have even considered. But it makes him endearing because he has quirks like a normal person. Like Beerus is always sleeping, he's always eating, and that's pretty much it. That's that's the limit. That's the Beerus plot. Is he eating? No. Is he asleep? No. Okay, well he's just watching everybody else train and being annoyed. Other than that, he doesn't really do much of anything. Um, but he exists as sort of the measuring stick for the series. I'm talking about Beerus, but it's interesting, you know. But yeah, Ox King, man, he want to hit the grill, man. He used to be rich too, which is strange. Why Chi Chi is poor because Ox King was rich. Man, he should have been rich. He was like a princess or something. But then again, their house did burn down, if I remember correctly. So they didn't give us much to go on in the next episode. So when it came to what's going to happen in the next episode of Daima, it's basically just Goku going to the demon realm. Uh, the young lady, I think her name is Pansy. She hasn't shown up yet. Bulma will build a ship to take Vegeta and Piccolo and whomever else is going to go. I'm just going to go, just guess, is going to be her, Piccolo, and Vegeta to the demon realm. But in the opening, there were 3 or 4 ships. And if you count Glorio's ship, Bulma's ship, and maybe the other girl's going to have a ship, then maybe that'll be 3. And then Goku was flying on the Nimbus. But that was as Goku as an adult. So maybe that was just part of for the intro, and that's not showing us what's going to happen in the series. But I'm very I liked the episode. I just didn't think they did a lot. There was a lot of lore. There was a lot of interesting story elements, but nothing major occurred. Nothing major. It's not a heart pumping, you know, angle yet. All right. So in the in the community tab, I'm going to put up a poll about whether I should start watching the TV show Supernatural or the TV show Grimm. And I'm going to there's no guarantee I'm going to finish either one of these things, but I'm probably going to end up watching one of them as they both were suggested to me. That if I liked monster of the week type of monster killing and shit like that, that I would like these. And I said, okay, I'm always looking for something interesting to watch. And since I didn't see these things on TV, I'm willing to, give it a try. So feel free to let me know which one of these things you want me to watch. I still suggest everybody watch Batman the Animated Series, Harley Quinn Aid. It's one of my favorite episodes of this series. So until next week, thank you guys for your time. I'll talk to you guys later.